All right, so are you ready to dive deep into like the evolving world of CEOs?
Absolutely. We're not talking basic management 101.
Right, like you already know that stuff.
We're going straight to the good stuff.
Right.
What makes CEOs tick today? And how is that different from, say, 2009?
Oh, and one more thing.
Yeah,
We're not just speculating.
we've got data
Tons of data, almost 5,000 executive assessments.
spanning 2 decades. The kind of data that GHS Smart, a top consulting firm, uses to, evaluate these top execs.
So it's like we're getting a sneak peek into how companies are choosing their leaders in this like crazy new world.
Right. And this new study, fresh from the University of Chicago, well, it throws a few curveballs. They analyzed 30 different traits. Decision-making to how someone handles pressure.
Hmm.
They found it all boils down to 4 core
For
dimensions.
4. That's like way more elegant than most management articles I've come across.
Right. It's all about finding the signal in the noise. These 4 dimensions, they really capture what makes a CEO effective. The first one, general ability.
Ah, like the superstar theory?
Mm.
Some people are just like exceptionally good.
Exactly. They excel no matter the task.
Okay. So what's next?
Well, the next dimension is all about how a CEO operates.
Hmm.
Execution versus interpersonal skills. Are they just laser focused on results, or do they gather input from, those below them?
It's not just what they do, but how they do it. Interesting.
Right. And then there's the third dimension, all about how a CEO influences others.
Oh, this is a good one.
Charisma versus analytical skills. Do they inspire with their personality, or are they more about winning people over with logic and data?
I can already think of a few CEOs who fit each of those. So what's the final piece of the puzzle?
The final dimension is creative strategic versus detail-oriented. It's whether a CEO is a big-picture visionary or someone who's all about meticulous planning and execution. Like, think Steve Jobs versus Tim Cook.
Both amazing, but in different ways, for
Yeah.
sure. Okay, 4 dimensions. Got it.
Yeah.
Now has the type of CEO who succeeds really changed, like over time?
Okay, here's that curveball I mentioned. This study found that the average CEO candidate after 2009, well, they actually scored lower on general ability than those before 2009.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's kind of surprising.
Right. You'd think with how fast business moves now, they'd need to be even sharper.
I know.
They're also more focused on execution, more analytical, and less charismatic. Not exactly what we picture when we think modern CEO.
So are companies looking for less capable CEOs now? That doesn't sound like a recipe for success.
It's not that simple. The CEOs who are actually hired don't show this drop in general ability. They're even more interpersonal than those who weren't chosen.
Companies are having to like really search for the best of the best.
Exactly. And that raises the question, what's causing this shift in the talent pool?
Yeah. Where are all the high ability folks?
Well, the study doesn't tell us everything, but it does give us another interesting tidbit. High-ability CEOs, well, they tend to cluster together. If a company's interviewing a brilliant CEO, their CFO and COO candidates are probably top-notch too.
Talent attracts talent.
Right. Maybe the best want to work with the best. Or maybe these high-ability leaders create environments that nurture other great leaders.
It's chicken and egg thing, huh?
It really is. It makes this whole CEO landscape even more complex. Now, let's look at what companies are actually looking for in CEOs.
Okay.
Researchers used scorecards to figure this out.
Like a company's to-do list.
Yeah.
What are their biggest problems and goals?
Exactly.
So what do they find?
Demand for CEOs skilled in organic growth, operations, and strategy. It's up. But the need for staffing expertise is down.
Wait, organic growth. Growing the business from within, not just buying other companies.
You got it. Companies are less worried about massive workforces and more focused on using what they have well, streamlining operations, and making smart strategic moves in this fast-changing world.
Makes sense with automation and globalization and all those disruptions.
It's a whole new ballgame.
So basically, the business world itself is demanding a different kind of CEO.
And that's where things get really interesting. There's a mismatch. The CEOs companies want, and the CEOs actually out there, they don't match up.
They want strategic high-ability leaders.
But the candidates don't always have what it takes.
So the CEO world has changed, but maybe not how we thought it would.
It's not that CEOs themselves change, it's the supply of talent. It's not keeping up with what businesses need.
That raises some big questions. What's causing this talent shortage? What does it mean for the future of businesses and the economy as a whole?
These are questions we're thinking about. What's really fascinating is that
So if companies can't find these like strategic leaders, what happens? I mean, does that mean slower growth, Less innovation?
Maybe even problems for the whole economy. You're right to be concerned. This isn't just filling a job.
Right.
This has ripple effects on companies, on whole industries. If companies settle for less capable CEOs, well, it could be missed opportunities, slower growth, a bigger gap between those who get the best talent and those who, well, don't.
The companies with the best CEOs get the best people. And then everyone else struggles to keep up. It makes you think about how much a company's success really depends on having that top-notch CEO.
It's a huge question, and this study doesn't really answer it directly,
Right.
but it gives us some clues. Remember those GHS SMART assessments?
Oh, yeah, the ones that are supposed to be super accurate at predicting CEO success.
Those are the ones. They're known for being really thorough.
They go way beyond just a resume, don't they?
Definitely. They dig into a candidate's past, looking for patterns of behavior, decision-making, how they handle pressure. They even look at things like how respectfully they treat others and their listening skills.
Wow. So like a leadership personality test on steroids. But couldn't people try to, like, game the system?
They could try, but GHS SMART tries to prevent that. They use outside interviewers to get a more balanced view. And the interview is structured so you can't just give the right answers.
Makes sense. Companies wouldn't spend so much on these if they weren't getting something valuable. Okay, so we've got these assessments, and they feed into those 4 CEO dimensions. But are all the dimensions equally important, or do some matter more depending on what the company is facing?
That's a great question. And that's exactly what the researchers looked at. They found that some CEO types are definitely more in demand. It depends on the company's challenges and goals, those scorecards we talked about. Like, companies focused on strategy development, they really wanted CEOs who scored high on the creative and strategic dimension.
Makes sense. If you're trying to do something totally new, you want a leader who can think outside the box.
Exactly. And companies facing operational challenges, they wanted more analytical CEOs.
If you need to improve efficiency, you want someone who's all about the data.
It's all about matching the leadership style to the problem.
So there's no one-size-fits-all CEO. Each dimension matters in different situations.
Right. And what's interesting is that these connections between a CEO's traits and a company's scorecards, they stay pretty consistent over time, even though the pool of candidates is changing. The basic rules of matching leadership to challenges haven't changed that much.
Okay, but here's the issue. We know what works, but the supply of strategic, high-ability CEOs isn't there. What happens if this continues long-term?
Well, it could have a lot of negative impacts. Companies might have to lower their standards.
They might have to settle for leaders who can't really handle today's business world.
And that could mean slower growth, fewer innovations, maybe even fewer new jobs, and a weaker economy.
It's kind of scary when you think about it.
It also makes it harder to attract and keep good people in general. So the best people go to the companies with the best leaders, and other companies fall behind.
This is making me think, is this just because the business world is changing so fast? Or is there something we can do about this mismatch?
Well, I'm optimistic. I think we can find solutions. One key is to start thinking about leadership development as a long-term investment. It's not an afterthought.
Right.
We need to cultivate leadership qualities early on, give people real-world experience, let them experiment, take risks, develop those leadership skills.
So create a culture of leadership.
Yeah.
Encourage people to step up instead of just waiting for someone to make them a leader.
Exactly. And we need to broaden our idea of what good leadership is, the old command and control style. It's not always what works best today. We need different ways of thinking. We need to recognize that different people bring different strengths.
So we need to be proactive. Think ahead about how we're creating the next generation of leaders.
That's a great way to put it.
This has been really eye-opening. So the CEO landscape has changed, but the supply of CEO talent isn't really keeping up. But I like your optimism. What can companies actually do to develop these strategic high-ability leaders for the future?
Well, first you got to realize leadership development is not a one-time thing. It's got to be part of the company's DNA. Think ongoing mentorship, chances to lead projects outside their normal role, and letting people experiment, make mistakes and learn.
Create an environment where people feel like they can actually step up and develop those leadership skills.
Right. Instead of just trying to recruit from outside, grow that talent from within.
Makes sense.
And be open to different leadership styles. We get stuck on this idea of what a leader looks like, but there are lots of ways to be a good leader.
Yeah.
Some people are visionaries, others are amazing at getting things done or building consensus. Companies need to recognize and nurture all those different strengths.
No single CEO mold. Different situations need different approaches.
Exactly. And, it's not just on the companies. Individuals have a role to play, too.
Okay.
You can't just wait for someone to make you a leader. You got to seek out opportunities. Take on challenges that push you. Build your network.
It's both sides. Companies need to create the right environment, but people need to take charge of their own development, too.
Absolutely. And the good news is that leadership skills, you can learn them.
It's like any other skill. The more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah.
This deep dive has really given me a new way of thinking about CEOs and what it takes to lead in this crazy world.
Me too. Hopefully it's given you some things to think about as well, whether you're leading a team or just trying to understand the business world. Knowing how CEOs are changing is important for everyone.
It's not just some abstract idea. Leadership has real consequences for companies, for the economy, for all of us.
And said it better myself.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all this.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.